I've got some things I need to do in the kitchen today. Still working on putting up food for the winter mostly. So I've been processing some apples here. Got me a big bowl full. I've used my little apple peeler. It's Johnny Apple Peeler is the brand. It works really good. I'm sure there's other brands though too. These apples come from Farmer Tim down the road. I'm going to take them now that I've got them sliced up out to the porch, put them on my dehydrator trays out there and let them dry. And then with the cores and the peelings, a couple of years ago, Corey and I made vinegar for the first time, but I'm not going to do that this year. I'm going to get the juice out of it so that I can make some apple jelly. I've really been wanting some apple jelly. I also need to go outside and make a round through all of the garden areas and see how many tomatoes are out there and figure out what I need to do with the tomatoes, if there's enough for me to actually maybe can or do something else with today. And since there's a little touch of fall in the air, a little bit cooler the last few mornings, feels so nice. I've been thinking about fried pies, probably because also I've been working up on these apples that I will dry, and we'll eat a lot of them out of hand, but I can reconstitute them and make apple stack cake or fried pies. And last year, my nephew Ben, he shared his peaches with us, his peach bounty, and they were so good, so delicious. And I had so many at one time, I froze most of them, but some of them I dried. So I found this bag here in the pantry. My thought was when I dried them that I would keep doing that and I would end up with enough to make a peach stack cake instead of an apple stack cake, but this was the only ones I dried. So I'm going to put them out in this pot, put some sugar and some water, and let them start cooking, because I'm going to make fried pies and I'm going to use the peaches. I might not have enough peaches to make all the pies because these will really cook up. So if I don't, I will use some of the apples. I've used in the past. I have apple preserves. If you have peach preserves, you can use chocolate. Just the sky's kind of the limit when you think about what to put inside fried pies. But I've got a big day ahead of me, and I hope that I get it all done before supper time. So the dehydrator I use, I've had it several years now. It's an Excalibur. I really, really love it because it does a lot of stuff at one time. For many years, I used a little small round one, and Miss Cindy picked it up at a yard sale or a thrift store or something like that. I can't remember. And it works good too. You just had to constantly be rearranging and changing, and this one works really, really well. So these little trays, this part comes out, as you can see, and you can wash them, and of course you can wash this too. You can wash all of it. And I just lay the apples on there. Everybody has their own way of doing it, and I don't ever usually do it the same way. Sometimes I think they fit more if I do them that way. And as far as how close together to put them or how much to put in it, that's just something you'll have to play with and see what works good for you if you decide to use a dehydrator. The round one that I had it did have trays, but they were not this small gauge of holes in it for the air to go through, and sometimes my apples, if they were on the small side, would fall through. And then they just slide back inside the unit. And as far as how long it takes for the apples to dry, it depends on the one you're using, and I guess how many apples you have. It takes several hours though for me. For this, it'll take several hours for these to dry. And really, it's kind of personal preference too. You can dry them really, really a long time to where you'll bend them and they'll crunch almost like a potato chip. And those are really tasty to eat like that if you are going to just eat them out of hand. You can leave them to where they're more pliable and kind of bendable. That's usually, mine's somewhere between those two, I guess. And when you store them, a lot of people that dry their apples, they will store them in, they'll put them in the freezer after they're dried. I don't do that. I just put mine in a Ziploc bag. I get all the air out of it that I can get out, and I put it in the pantry. And I've had good luck doing that. You can also buy some of the oxygen absorbers if you wanted to and use those, but I've never done that. The little round one that I had that Miss Cindy got me, it didn't have it just had an on-off switch, so that was it. It was either on or it was off. This one has a temperature gauge, and then it has a little chart that tells you what the best temperature is to use for fruits or for vegetables or various things of what you're using. I think the one for fruits on this says 135. Of course, there's lots of different ways to dry fruit or dry anything that you're dehydrating. You can use your oven, put it on a really low temperature and use it. A lot of people do that. The old-timey way of drying, and they had to dry a lot of stuff, was to, put it outside and let sunshine do that. You had to, put it on screens. Miss Cindy told me her grandmother had a smokehouse that had a slanted or a flat roof. It was metal, and she would put her apples on top of that. I've heard a lot of people say that they put them inside their car. If you think about it, your car, in the dash of your car gets really, really hot. If you do put them outside, one thing you have to worry about, of course you have to bring them in and bring them back out, if it takes longer than the day for them to dry. And you have to worry about the bugs and the flies and especially the yellow jackets getting on them. And when I told Granny I was going to dry my apples that we'd got from Tim, she's told me, I said one time she was drying them. I forgot about this a long time ago when my Corey and Katie was little and my nephews and niece was little. And she said Mark had come out to see her and said he's come in the house and said, "Granny, you ain't going to have no dried apples this year." And she said, "Why not, Mark? I've got them out there drying." And he said, "I know, and they're just covered with yellow jackets. The yellow jackets are eating them up." I've also heard people say their grandmother or their family or whoever was able to use, they had almost like an attic room that got really, really hot. And they were able to use that, so they were inside, but it was hot enough that it really dried them well. So you didn't have to worry about the yellow jackets. So I'm on my last tray now. Drying, whether it's apples or anything else, it really intensifies the flavor. So you may be thinking, well, why are you going to dry it and then you're just going to cook it and use it for applesauce? Why not just do that? Drying just really gives a richness that there's just no other way to get it than drying. It just really adds a real richness to whatever it is, whether it's if you're drying fruit, if you're drying tomatoes, whatever it is. And of course, in the old days, they needed to dry a lot of things because preservation. They were trying to make it through the cold winter coming ahead of them, and there's no refrigeration and no way to really keep things. So this was a good way to ensure you had it. Now you can hole up apples like you would potatoes and keep them like that, but they were just trying to preserve things as many different ways as they could so that they made sure they had enough to feed their family. We really enjoy, like I said, I make pies and cakes and things, but we really enjoy eating them out of hand, just like you would a snack. Now my friend Ed, he makes dried apples, and he makes them to where they're more of the crunchy kind like I was talking about, and they are so good. They're addictive. You just can't quit eating them. They're so good. So all of my apples are not going to fit this go round. So I will have to think about what I'm going to do with them. Whether I'm going to cook them, save them, and dry them again. Now, if you're worried about them turning brown, you can look online and find instructions of how to soak them in lemon juice and things like that. The brown part don't bother me a bit, so I never do that step. But you could certainly do it if you want them to stay a more white color for the apple. So I've got the peaches going. It'll take them a long while to reconstitute. And I went ahead and put the extra apples. I'm just going to cook them because I know this is not going to be enough to fill my pies. So we'll have apple and we'll have peach. And if we run out of that, we'll have to do something else. But I'm just going to go ahead and cook the apples. And now I'm going to go see what kind of tomatoes I can find. The tomatoes are definitely on their way out, but there are still some great ones to get. And some, see, this is inside the Malabar spinach there, hiding. There's a green one, still some green ones for us to look forward to. That one's got some damage on it. I'll get rid of it. That one does too, almost looks like a bird. Well, I filled up this basket. I'm going to go down to the other part of the garden and see if there's any tomatoes ripe down there. But first, I'm going to have to check on my peaches and my apples. The apples are starting to cook some too. Not near as many tomatoes down there in the lower part, but I did get a few. So now I've got to decide what to do with them. Really beautiful haul of tomatoes this morning. Our tomatoes have done really good this year, but most years me and Matt can manage to grow tomatoes. It's one of the things that grows very well here on the north side of the mountain up here where we live. Now though, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with them. Typically I just can them. Now I don't can them. There's so many different ways to can tomatoes, and you know, some people are really picky and it's fine. Everybody should do what they as preference, you know, to themselves. They would get all the seeds out, of course get the skins off, and then there's people that do more of a juice, I guess, and then more of they puree it so it's real smooth. Just so many different ways to actually do your tomatoes. I do them the way Granny did them when I was growing up, which is not really anything special at all. But I would get me some hot boiling water going, and then I would core the tomatoes. I'll wash them, get all the dirt and stuff off of them. I'll drop them in that boiling water and let them stay just a minute or two till the skins come easily off, and discard the skins. And then with all those tomatoes, I just cook them. I cook them and stir them. I leave the seeds in, and I don't worry about anything about how pureed it is or anything like that. I just cook them down until I think they're good enough for me. And then I have my jars really hot. I have those tomatoes boiling hot. I put the tomatoes in the jars, put the lids and the taps on them, and let them seal. Now, canning experts today say you should not do that. It's dangerous. You shouldn't do it. There's a risk of all kinds of things happening to you. So you could, there's two different schools of thought when it comes to canning tomatoes. Well, there's probably more than that. But you can water bath tomatoes, but it takes a really long time to water bath them if you follow the directions. Or you can pressure can them, and then it doesn't take as long. You don't have to pressure them as long. So there's all kinds of videos on YouTube, though, showing you how to do that. And either of those would work fine. I mean, the water bathing or the pressure canning, either one. It's just that's a lot of people say, well, by the time I water bath for this length of time, I could just pressure can for a shorter amount of time, and that's what they do. As far as the type of tomato that people can, a lot of people want a canning tomato like Roma, and it depends on if you're making sauce or what you're doing. All those, different things factor into it, and you just have to find out what works best for you. I can the tomatoes we grow, if they're big ones, if they're little ones, if they're, if I could find one, those that are like the cat face, that is like two grown together or three, I can them all. It may take me more time than if they were all pretty and perfect, like the ones around here that I would get like from one of the big farms that grow tomatoes here, they're all about the same size, uniform. They're all, there's no cavities or anything like that I have to deal with on my heirloom tomatoes. But still, I just can what we grow is the way that I do it. Today, though, I've got to decide, do I want to can tomatoes? I already have done that several times, or do I have enough, and what else would I do with them? Last weekend, maybe it was the weekend before, I can't remember now, all the putting up runs together. But I thought, why don't I try to make tomato juice? I've never done that. And we like tomatoes. We like tomato juice. And truthfully, I was looking for an easy way out. I didn't want to spend the whole day in the kitchen with all the tomatoes. I didn't have that many either, though. I had a small amount. And so I thought, well, I want to try something different. So I have a wonderful steam juicer that a dear lady sent me several years ago. I love it. I use it for all kinds of stuff. And I thought, well, why couldn't I use that for tomatoes? So I did. And the liquid that come out, you know, I was expecting it to be red like the jars of tomatoes I can. It wasn't. It was more clear with a tinge of red, but it was really tasty. It was really tasty. And so I canned that. And I've ended up with, I didn't have many tomatoes, but I ended up with maybe 3 or 4 quarts and a pint. And even, I don't remember if I did a pint or if I think I did 2 little jelly jars too, little half pints. Maybe it was a pint and a little jar. Anyway, whatever it was, I've canned those, and I thought, well, that'd be nice. We could enjoy that this winter. So, and Corey tasted it, Matt tasted it, I tasted it. We all really liked it. I don't think Katie tasted it. She's not crazy about tomatoes, though, so she probably wouldn't have liked it. Anyway, I could do that again with these tomatoes. Some of them I'm going to save out for Matt to eat because we were out of the ones inside. I cut the last one last night for supper. And I probably will take a few to Granny, so then I won't have that many. I think I've just talked myself into making more juice. So I think that's what I'm going to do with the tomatoes. Now that I've decided I'm going to make the juice from the tomatoes, is what I'm going to do with most of them. I'm going to first go ahead with that, clean up my apple mess and be done with that. So I'm going to use the juicer to get the juice out of those peelings and the cores and everything. So this is how it works. It's a 3-piece unit. So this bottom part, you see there's water in that one. Got it filled with water. The second one is what actually collects the juice. You can see there's a hose that comes out of the end of the bottom edge of the pot. Once it collects, the juice runs through this and then goes out into, you know, whatever you put it in, a container, a bowl, a pot. I usually put a kitchen chair right in front of my stove, and then I set a pot in it and let it just drip out into that. Then on the very top is where this one with the little holes goes, and you can see I've got all those wonderful apples in there in the top, and then it's got a lid. So I will put the lid on it here. I've already got the stove turned on and just let it start cooking. Now this is a process that takes a good long while. It takes a while. It's not a fast process, so you kind of have to do it when you're able to kind of keep an eye on it, but you don't have to stand over top of it. You just need to make sure the water in the bottom didn't evaporate. And when I first started using it, I thought, well, how will I ever know that it got all the juice out? How will I ever know? After you use it a couple of times, you can look at whatever you're doing, whether you're doing grapes, you're doing apples, tomatoes, whatever. You can look. They kind of sink down, and you can just tell when it's, you know, make your own judgment call, but you can kind of tell when all the juice has been extracted just by the look of it. And that's just something I've learned as I've used it over the last couple of years. So it's about dinner time. I got hungry. I had some mashed potatoes we'd had for supper a night or two ago, and they were so good. I didn't want them to waste them. We ate them leftovers like the next night, but then there was still some left. So I come out here, since all my stove eyes are took up by my putting up today and my making my fried pies, I come out to the porch and I'm making us some tater cakes. If you've never had tater cakes, they are just mashed potatoes mixed with onions, some flour, some seasoning, and then cooked. I have a great video where Granny's showing how to make tater cakes. I'll link to that in the description below. These are going to be so good. I know Matt will really enjoy them too. He's been out up in the woods today. He's been chopping wood. He's been doing all kinds of stuff, so I know he's worked up an appetite too. All I had to do was yell tater cakes, and Matt come running to taste some. Yep. You can see I've already been tasting them as I was cooking them out there. So good.
Ooh, it's hot.
Very hot. Very good. Tater cakes are wonderful because they're got a little crisp on the outside, and then the inside's all that mushy mashed potatoes. So good. While we were out there, we got some. Well, I was out there cooking. Matt come by. We got some peas we can warm up and some green beans. But then we got to talking about, Matt said his wonderful hot tomatoes that he made would go get good with it. So he's already been into 1 jar. He couldn't wait.
It's been a week and they're good.
Most of the time I tell people they should wait a month when they make something like this. But it's hard to wait sometimes. I agree.
It's just good, it ain't.
And Matt had Austin eating them last night, and he really liked them.
I forgot to send him home with a jar too.
Yeah. I they're afraid they're too spicy for me.
Oh, come on, be brave. Little bitty
I'm afraid
piece.
they're too spicy. I guess I could take a little tiny piece.
They are good. You know what? Are they hot?
They're hot and they're way too spicy.
There ain't no spice in it.
I mean, they're the hot, what I mean.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they're spicy. Really spicy. So
Put some
I
water.
won't be eating any more of those. Whew, they're hot. But I brought in a jar of our kraut. Now we've already opened one jar, so we know it's good. We've already been eating it. But I'm gonna try some here. I'd rather have the kraut than those hot pickles. Hot tomatoes. Very good. I don't think this jar is as tart as the other jar we opened though. Here's your fork. Let's see. I don't think it's quite as wangy. Of course, it could be that my mouth is burning but from the hot pepper that I can't tell.
Oh, it ain't that hot.
It's pretty hot.
It's good. It's not as tart.
Not as tart,
Real
not
good.
as strong as the other jar we opened. But that's good. And it'll continue to ferment. I'll put it in the refrigerator. It'll continue to ferment a little slower, so maybe it'll improve some. No, thank you. We are going to go eat the rest of our dinner though, and then I got to get back to my apples and my fried pies. Matt definitely wants me to get back to that. It's a little bit later in the day. Matt and I had a nice dinner. Then I had some other stuff I needed to do, so now I'm back to my fried pies. I did a video a few years back about fried pies. I will link to that in case you want to go see it. But basically, I'm going to make up my basic dough here. I've got me a little cheat sheet here. Got it wrote down so I could tell you, and I just stuck my thing in the lard. Okay, I've got 4 cups of self-rising flour. Already got it in my bowl. I've got 3/4 cup of shortening. I've got it right here. If you had fresh lard, that would be great, but I don't have any. And I've got 1/4 cup butter. I went ahead and shredded my butter. I learned that wonderful trick from my friends, the Holmans. I love it. It makes it so much easier when you're going to incorporate your butter. And then I've got some ice water. We're going to need about 1 to 2 cups of ice water. We'll just see how much as we go along. So now that I've got the flour in there, I'm going to go ahead and put the shortening and the butter. Just set that right there. The butter's melting fast since I shredded it. You can put it in the freezer and let it get even colder before you shred it, and that works good. Like put it in there about 10 or 15 minutes, but I did not do that, so mine's pretty soft. Okay. Now I'm going to incorporate all that into my flour with my little pastry knife. Okay, I think that's good for that. Put that right there. And now I'm going to start adding my water. I'll start with and keep the ice out of it. Start with about a cup. I'm sure I'm going to need more than that. Definitely am. Okay, I might be there. I'm gonna have to get my hands dirty, get into it, and try to knead it and see if I'm where I should be or not. You want it just I'm gonna put a little bit of flour on my hands. Want it to be able to stay together, but you don't want it so wet that it's soupy. If you got it too wet, you could add more flour. Of course, if you are too dry, you could add more water. I think I'm just right though. So that was probably a little less than 2 cups of water. Not much though, right at 2 cups. So you can see it's come into a nice ball of dough here. Pretty soft. Not super stiff, but plenty good enough to hold itself together. So now I'm going to move some of my stuff and get out my mat so that I can start rolling them out. Now I'm just going to give it a few more little kneads to make sure that it's all incorporated together. I may need to add a little bit more flour. I've got some flour here with me. You can see it's already starting to stick. Put out a little bit more. And when it comes to actually cutting out your pies, there's all kinds of different ways to do it. And they even make little crimps that you can put them in, and they cut it out and then crimp it. But I usually just do it this way, the way Granny did it when I was growing up. Now, Granny didn't really fry pies. She baked them in the oven, and those are really good too if you didn't want to fry it, if you don't want to fool with that part. They're really good that way. So I think that's pretty good right there. Now when it comes to rolling them out, there's all kinds of different ways. You just do it what works best for you. Granny would pinch off a little bit and then work with a little bit of dough at one time. I like to kind of roll out a big area and work with that. You can also buy a little hand pie it's not really a template, it's more of a little fold thing that folds your dough for you. You can do that lots of different ways. I'm just going to start with a big hunk here and see how we do. Put me out a little bit more flour since I'm going to be rolling it out now. You want your dough to be fairly thin because you want it to cook. It cooks fast in that hot grease, but you want it to make sure that it cooks all the way through. So it does need to be fairly thin. If you made them before, you know you kind of just have to get the feel for that. So I think that's pretty good. I like to just use anything I've got. Usually it's one of these that goes on one of my Pyrex bowls, and I use it just to cut around if you want them to be perfectly even. Sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I just do more of Granny's, kind of get a piece and just roll it out in whatever shape it is. That's what it ends up in, and that's okay. But I'll be neat today. I worry more about being neat, I guess, if I'm making the fried ones than I would if I was just making the baked ones. And then because when you do start actually cooking them, they go so fast, you just need to already have them all done. I find that works better for me. So I do all of this part, I cut them all out, till the dough's gone, and then I fill them all till the dough's gone. Then all I've got left to do is to actually fry them. So I've got me a tray here with some flour, and I'll just lay them to the side there and sprinkle flour in between them so that they don't stick together while I'm doing the rest of the dough. Just keep adding flour as you need it to roll out. I'm gonna get me some more dough. Okay, I got them all rolled out. This was my last one, which will be smaller, not even big enough to actually use the lid that I was using to cut it out. Sometimes I use this lid so you can see the difference in them. It all just depends on what size you want them. This makes a much smaller one, and of course the dough would go further and you would make more. Today I just went with the larger one. Sometimes I use that one, and like I said, sometimes I do it freehand and they end up all different kinds of wonky shapes. I'm not sure how many I ended up with. Let's see. If I counted right, about 18, maybe 17. that will be plenty for us, and they're bigger, so it doesn't take as many to fill you up. I'm going to straighten up just a little bit, and then I'm going to start filling them. So my peaches turned out lovely. Look how you see in there, they're really rich and dark. I've tasted them, they're so delicious, so delicious. So I'm going to use them, and then if I run out, I'll use the apple. I may have enough though, but if I run out, I'll use the apple that I cooked up from the apples I was drying. And if I run out of apples, which I don't think I will, I brought up a jar of blueberry jam, and I'll just use that. So now I'm just going to, I'm trying to get where maybe you could see. So I'm reverse order, I guess. I'll bring these back over here. Let me start with one that's nice and even. If you need more flour, you can put it out just to keep it from sticking. And then it's as simple as, well, I'm saying that, and then I remember something that I didn't get. Just one moment. Actually, I've already got it here. There's the water. I need some water. So it's as simple as putting some of the, whatever it is that you're going to fry, right in the middle. About, I don't know, I guess that's about 2 tablespoons. You can play around with what works for you if you want more or less. I usually end up putting too much and it comes out, but that is part of my favorite parts, where the juice comes out and gets all sticky and crunchy on the edges. I definitely put too much in this one. So before I close it though, I'm just going to wet my fingers and kind of wet the edge of the dough a little bit, and then I'm going to close it, push it down a little. I'm going to take my fork, I've dipped it in some flour, and then I'm just going to crimp the edges. So you can see that makes a pretty good size pie there. Those little edges, of course, make it real pretty, and keep the, between that and the water, should keep it from coming open on you when you fry it. Put that one right there. Start another one. Dropped my spoon as usual, and I forgot my water. If you're like me, you have to get into the rhythm, and then you're like, oh yeah, this is what I do. This is the steps that I do. First one or two you feel rusty if it's been a while since you've done it, and I've not made pies this year. Not like this. I've made some baked ones, but I've not made fried ones. I think of baked hand pies as being much more forgiving than the fried ones. It's more intimidating. That was actually why Granny started baking hers instead of frying them. It is more difficult to fry them. It's more time consuming, takes the oil and all that, but it's kind of trickier to get them to cook all the way through. And I think it was her great Aunt Susie that would make them. They'd be so delicious, but Granny said she finally just give up and started putting hers in the oven, and they're still really good like that too. I keep dropping my spoon. Let's see, I just don't have a good setup, do I? Maybe that's better. This is my last peach one, so I did run out of peaches, but I'm glad I got to use them all. Now I'm going to move this, and I'm going to get my apple. I've made a mess. You can't make fried pies without making a mess though. I'll try to scoot these down so that I can maybe remember which is peach and which is apple. Most of them will be peach. Last one. I'm gonna have a little bit of the apples left over, but it'll be no problem. Somebody will eat them. Eat them for a snack, or even eat them for breakfast in the morning with some toast or something. There's barely enough for one person left, but somebody will eat them. 17. I ended up with 17. So my apples are still going on the stove, slowly dripping out that wonderful juice. So I think I'm going to go back outside and use the Camp Chef out there, and I'm gonna cook them out there. I think that would be easier. But first, I'm gonna clean up my mess a little bit. We're almost there. Doesn't take them very long. You just want them to get brown on both sides. I try to not turn them over but once. Sometimes I can't resist and I turn them over too soon. But once they're golden brown, they're done. And once they come out, you can shake some. You don't have to put anything on them, but if you want to, you can shake some. I've got cinnamon and just sugar mixed together. Put that on them. Makes them really, really good. Some people roll them, put them in a bag or put them in a bowl and do that, but I usually just sprinkle it on. We've got all the peach ones done. Matt's out here helping me. You can see we've already been trying them too. We had to add some more oil to the pot. We're letting it heat up, and then we'll do the apples and we'll be all done. Matt's saying he probably need more milk. That was the last of the milk in one jug. You're gonna need more than that. So while we were outside, Matt helped me, assisted me out there. He was my sugar man. Put the sugar on them.
Sugar daddy.
Sugar daddy, yeah. We tried a peach one. It was so good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So now we're gonna try one of the apples. Let me break us one open, or how do you want to do it? One of these little ones, or you may want a big one. They're cooled off a little bit now.
That'll do.
That's good.
Very good.
You like it better than the peach?
Probably. I mean, I like them both awful well.
So very good. I'm thinking of it as the perfect end to a perfect day. I've had a really good day today. You're just thinking of it as something really good to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't get much deeper than that. It's just good.
Just good.
Yeah.
It is tasty. We had to add more oil before we finished and heat it back up. We just left what we had in there, but they do soak up some of the oil, so by the time we were almost near the end, it was getting low in the pot. So you may have to add a little bit more if you try them. I'll link again to that video that I did a couple of years ago, and it kind of focuses more on the process than I did today, but so that you can go check it out if you want to. It's not something I make all the time. Mostly when I make the hand pies, I just bake them in the oven, and they're good. They're good, but they're just not this good.
All right.
They're just not this good. But this is a much more in-depth process, so that's why it's easier. Sometimes we'll have those baked ones and just have eggs, and that's our breakfast, so it's easy. These are really good.
Gosh, yeah.
Makes me wish I had more dried peaches.
I wish you did too.
Yeah, but that was it. And those were from last year. That was from Ben's tree.
Oh, very good.
They were good. Very good. So the apples I think are about done. I don't know, Matt, estimate how much juice do you think that is? Like a quart and a half or something? 2 quarts?
Probably a quart.
Quart? Okay, Matt says I'm overestimating.
Well, I don't know. It might be a little more.
At least a quart anyway.
Yeah, there's at least a quart.
And I got at least that much, maybe a little bit more the last time I did apples. So I've definitely got enough to make a run of jelly. So I'll have that on my agenda for the future. And then I washed up all the apples back here, all the tomatoes back here. I'm going to go through them, let Matt pick out which ones he wants to keep, take a few to Granny, and then once I get the apples out of the steamer, I'll be ready to put the others in there. And before I do that, I'm going to make one more quick lap and get all the tomatoes, any tomatoes that are ripe, and throw them in there too. The tomato juice I made the other day was really good, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, very good. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have a few more jars to enjoy this winter. drink it with breakfast, just drink it for a snack with some crackers or something. Yeah. It'd be good when the cold snow blows.
Yep.
If it actually does.
Yeah.
I doubt that it.
I'm waiting on it.
I doubt that it actually will.
Yeah, you gotta have faith it will.
I don't have the faith.
It's gonna snow.
Okay. Am I gonna get to sled?
You're too old to sled.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I could have a grandson in each arm and go down the hill.
Yeah. All the way to the emergency ring.
Well, I'm going to take one down at Granny's and let her taste it while it's nice and hot. Take her some of those tomatoes. I really appreciate you spending time today with me in the kitchen while I was doing various different chores that needed to be done around here. That's why I said it's been a really good day. This is I guess my happy place, doing for my family, and also putting up food. It's such a joyous thing to put up food for the future and know that, like Matt said, if it snows, or I should say when it snows, right?
When it snows.
When it snows, we'll have some dried apples, we'll have some apple juice or apple jelly. By then I'll probably made it into that, and we'll have some tomato juice. That's all something to look forward to. We're always glad when you stop by to help us celebrate Appalachia.
That one and possibly good with some honey drizzled on it. Caddy, what do you want for supper?
I don't know.
Well, I've got to just have my supper.
Yeah, me too. That's what I was saying. Ain't no need to cook you.